Hello, welcome to Dio Relation Tales. Please subscribe my channel. It was the first time I had feelings for an older woman. However, the problem was not the age difference, which was considerable, but the fact of who she represented in my life. In a few words, I tell you in this story what happened when I put my eyes and attention on Alana, the owner of the house where I live. My name is Julian the First. I'm 24 years old, and I am an average young university student who had traveled to the city to fulfill his dreams. Like every foreign student, I had gone through countless stays that promised to be suitable for people like me, but I ended up disappointed because comfort and proximity were 2 points that did not always go hand in hand. So after a year and a half of bad experiences with people who did not understand the needs of students like me, I was satisfied with my search by finding the ideal place for me, a cozy box close to my university and subway lines, where a couple of gentlemen rented an extra room. They had it. Was there when I met Alana and Francisco, her husband. He was a retired military man who earned millions even in his retirement, and she had always worked as a housewife, so she had that passion for taking care of the home alive. So when their children moved out of town, they decided to put an ad online that they were taking renters for the small room next to theirs. This house is new, Francisco told me while taking a tour of the rooms and facilities it had. New, I asked, although I could tell by the way everything looks shiny. Yeah, Alana, and I considered that our previous house was too big for just the two of us, so we moved to this one. I nodded, even though I didn't agree with what he said. The house we were walking through had no hint of being small, so I was surprised by the price we had agreed to pay and receive respectively for the room. Additionally, Francisco assured me that I would get breakfast completely free, since his wife thought it was a good way to pay back for being his first tenant. I don't want to cause any inconvenience, I said. And that happened, since the last thing I expected was to be treated in a house that was someone else's. It's not a bother for Alana, Francisco answered again, while Alana remained silent but smiling as if that really pleased her. Really, it's not out of modesty. I can make my own breakfast. It's already decided, Julian replied Francisco, whose voice sounded authoritative. There's no point in protesting. Alana won't change her mind at that moment. I knew that I would not win any argument with Francisco, since I imagined that, being a soldier, he was used to everyone going along with him. I didn't want to be the exception, although I didn't like the fact of following and obeying orders without a word. It wasn't the way I had been raised, so it was weird for me, but to avoid any kind of problems, I decided to let it go, since that was an order that, although it made me uncomfortable, had a benefit for me. So I signed the contract that accredited me as the tenant of the small room, one in which I expected to stay until the end of my career. At that point, I never imagined that things would turn out to be chaotic for me. After all, they were just a couple of gentlemen in their 60s who I thought saw me as their own son, but life would soon show me how wrong I was, at least about the feelings of one party. The first few months flew by, and I soon realized that I was living more at university than at home. I was so focused on the issues of the subjects I had to take in extracurricular activities that I only came to the room to sleep. The morning was the only time I shared with Alana, who, as the days went by, I realized was very good looking. I knew she was an older woman, but that didn't take away from how well preserved she was. She had an athletic body and smooth skin, something that I had the impression she had achieved with aesthetic treatments that I often enjoyed. Furthermore, her clothing inside the house was elegant, reflecting her great sense of fashion that had not lost its validity since her youth. What caught my attention the most was the loose way in which she addressed the people who helped her. From time to time, some ladies would arrive early and insist that they would take care of my breakfast just as they would begin cleaning and disinfecting the common spaces of the house. She refused, saying that it made her happy to be able to please me with that, so no one, not even me, said a single word against it. I liked seeing her like that, and in a way I wasn't sure if I should or not. It wasn't the typical affection she felt toward a mother, older sister, or mentor. Her body was attractive to me, and her way of being was a caress for my soul, but no matter how much I thought, I always came to the same conclusion. I had to eliminate those thoughts from my head. Like I told you, that was easy. Well, my head was busy, but soon the end of the semester approached, leaving me with less time in classes and more time studying privately at home, and that's when things started to get more interesting between the two. One day while I was in the room, one of the cleaning ladies came to meet me. To be honest, she was beautiful, with a delicate body but marked curves that would drive any man crazy. She approached and smiled delicately at me while she continued with her activities, where I could observe her dedication. It was obvious that she wanted to flirt with me, and I wasn't approved not to look at a bit of his charms. That situation was like watching a forbidden dance, a priv moment where two young people seemed to experience the attraction that consumed them inside. The young lady hypnotized me with her slow and delicate movements, almost innocent, as if she didn't want the thing. "Mister, would you like me to clean here?" said the girl, pointing to one of the seats that was close to me. I swallowed thickly but managed to nod. I felt my body tense as a tingling ran down my cheeks. She must have been blushing, but not as red as the moment she approached the place she had mentioned before. I could hear my heart in my ear beating frantically. It had been a long time since I had last freed myself, but my mind had already begun to scheme. I was going to do. How would that happen? Could I come over there? I immediately put that thought out of my mind. I could never do it at home. It would be a lack of respect for the trust of Alana and Francisco. In that case, I thought I would have to get the number of the girl in front of me to meet outside, and that was what I proposed to do next. However, the sound of a plate falling alerted us both. She gasped and adjusted her dress while I turned my face to meet Alana's fiery gaze behind me. She didn't say a word, but she didn't need to. She might not be a fortune teller, but it was obvious that this had bothered her. For the next few nights I felt embarrassed. I didn't want Alana to think that I was a pervert who only thought about being with girls inside her house, much less that situation, which was still so innocent, gave rise to them deciding to take me out of the most convenient room I had found since my stay moving to the city. My head was spinning while my mind chw the most precise words to be able to talk to Alana the next day. But when I looked into her eyes as she handed me breakfast, nothing came out of my mouth other than a short thank you. It was pathetic, I know, but I felt intimidated by the lady's penetrating gaze. In the end, he could only pray to heaven for Alana to forget what had happened. In fact, I thought she was making stories in my head, and that she had probably already turned the page on what had happened a few weeks ago. Still, there was no particular reason beyond disrespect why she should continue thinking about the situation. But then it happened one night when I had left my room to get a glass of water. I found her in the living room. She was sitting on the furniture reading a book while the aromatic candles filled the room. The yellow light of the lamp made everything more tempting, and without realizing it, my gaze had begun to travel over it. It wasn't until I heard his voice that I snapped out of the trance. "Do you like to watch people?" she asked. I got scared, swallowing thickly without knowing what to say. If I opened my mouth, I was probably going to stutter out my excuse, but she didn't wait for me to do something. She stood up, closing her book tightly and leaving it on the cabinet. Then she faced me, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and desire that left me breathless. "That was what you did with the lady on duty wasn't it, she told me. Her tone was strong, biting. I knew I was in trouble, but I was willing to get on my knees and ask for forgiveness to keep my room. I lowered my head, signaling that I was sorry, and waiting for my moment to justify myself, but his long, soft fingers grabbed my jaw tightly and lifted my face. We were so close that we could both feel each other's breath brush against our faces. I didn't understand why, but it didn't scare me so much anymore. The fact that she was a married woman, and that in fact her husband could come out at any moment and see us in such a compromising situation, did not cross my mind. Nothing mattered more than the presence of that older woman who completely intoxicated my senses. I thought that nothing could make me feel more tense, anticipating something that I didn't know was going to happen. But then Alana spoke, her voice lower, serious, seductive. Julian, let's go to the office, she told me in a whisper, and there, before taking my hand, she pressed her face against mine, while our lips opened, hungry with desire to become one. It was like this, glued to each other, with a hot kiss, that we arrived at her military husband's office to disappear for a moment while the door camouflaged everything we were doing inside. I didn't know if it was the fact of my little, almost no recent activity, but that job was the best I had had in a long time. No young woman could compare to Alana in any way, taking me to see places that I didn't know existed. I could also see that the feeling was reciprocal because of the playful and mischievous way in which the owner of the house where I lived told me what she liked. But we had to separate, at least for that night. That's when, in the middle of my cold sheets, I realized what I had really done. I had crossed a line that put me in serious danger, since I had no doubt that Francisco could take action against me if he found out what had happened between his wife and me. However, Alana didn't seem to get enough of me or me of her. The next few nights I was visited by her in my own room, and that was when, in the middle of our breaks, she assured me that there was no problem in what we were doing. She knew her husband was cheating on her, so with me she was just giving him back a spoonful of his own medicine. After hearing that, I felt calmer, and our special relationship continued its course. I couldn't give up Alana in my room, and not even Francisco, with his military rank, could change my mind about that. Leave me in the comments where you are from, and if you liked my story, thank you very much, and I hope to make many friends here.